And welcome to Horror Bois. It's a podcast on the internet. I'm Austin, joined as always by
Chris.
And Isaiah.
And we are the Horror Bois. And this isn't just any podcast on the internet. This is a horror movie review podcast where we review a horror movie every week. Or sometimes twice a week for us, due to us having to record this 2 days after we recorded the last week's episode. For you, nothing's changed. But for us, it's hell. No, I'm kidding. It's fine. But we are continuing our review series for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. And today we are going to be reviewing the 2003 remake, just called Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I guess, to be fair, technically the first movie ever called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because the first movie was called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, spelled wrong, because that's not how the word chainsaw is. But for some reason, that first movie is how it is. But this is not the last movie called Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There will be another one.
Yeah.
Because why not? And this movie is directed by Marcus Nispel, who at this point had pretty much only done music videos. It's one of his first big roles, not roles, but big directorial endeavors. He does later go on to direct the Friday the 13th reboot that we all enjoyed, so that's cool.
Huh.
The writer for this movie is Scott Kasser, or Kasser? I don't know how to pronounce it. Who later goes on to just pretty much only write remakes, apparently, because he also wrote the remake for The Crazies and Amityville Horror.
Nice work if you can get it.
Yeah.
Just fixing a movie.
Or completely changing it depending on the movie.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, also this is something for us. It's not our first, remake or reboot, whichever one you want to call it, because it kind of fluctuates which one's what. But this is not the first one for us, and it's definitely not the first one. Period, because there's been remakes since the late 70s and early 80s of 50s horror movies. But this was one that kind of broke open the floodgates. This was made by Platinum Dunes Studios, which was Michael Bay's studio that mostly did horror remakes. A couple of his other movies also got put under the label, but mostly it was horror remakes, like Friday the 13th, or the remake, or to not as good success in my opinion, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
What year was that one, if you remember off the top of your head?
Nightmare on Elm Street is 2010, Friday the 13th is 2009.
I was going to say, it seemed like for about a decade after this one, that was in vogue.
This opened the floodgates. There's they also made Amityville Horror, the remake, but there's also every 80s slasher got a remake. Silent Night, Deadly Night got a remake. More that I can't think of off the top of my head, but they were there. But yeah, there were a lot of remakes, and it's pretty much all thanks to the success of this movie. This opened the floodgates, because the next year, Dawn of the Dead, which was Zack Snyder's remake of one of Romero's movies, came out. There was tons of remakes, and it's pretty much all thanks to this, which, you either thank this movie because you like horror remakes, or you can blame this for horror remakes existing. Whichever take, I understand. It was also specifically put out by New Line Cinema, so that's cool. Back to New Line. Always got to bring back
to New Line.
Yeah. On the documentary I watched, I did get to hear, the great Bob Shea talk about this movie, so that's pretty cool.
Do you mean that bartender in leather from...
or the teacher, or the... I think he was also a bus station attendant, selling tickets or something like that. I don't know. Who knows?
A bus driver?
No, he wasn't the driver. He was the ticket salesman.
He was the ticket window guy.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember.
Yeah. Because Freddy's always the driver. Come on.
Right.
But yeah. So... yeah, that's it. That's the end of the preamble. I guess we can get into the actual movie now.
The actual Bill of Rights.
Yeah, we open with a new twist. on the intro, which is instead of crawl, we just get narration.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't get to read it along with them. It is the same narrator who was in the first one. I don't remember his name off the top of my head. I didn't write it down. Probably should have. But they did get back the guy from the 1974 one to do the intro again, which I thought was kind of cool. Yeah, and this narration is over some black and white footage of evidence. We also hear some flashbulb sound effects during it. Which I guess, fun fact about the flashbulb sound effect, which does kind of change my opinion ever so slightly on the other movies that used it. It's not at all what a flashbulb sounds like. It was done with like a tuning fork on a violin. So like I guess I can't be mad that they used this random sound in other things because it literally is just a sound that they made up. But
it's not even a sample.
It was complete Foley work that's like its own things. Like I guess that does ever so slightly take my complaint for other movies that used it. But also, I feel like those movies did it in worse spots, so I still feel like I'm somewhat justified. But I did want to acknowledge that here, in case, any listeners go like, well, actually, it's not even a flashbulb sound effect, so why do you care? And fair. But I do. I care deeply. It offends me.
You do care deeply about this stuff.
Yeah. It is what rocks me to my core. And after we get these like photos of like just evidence from the murders, we're also hearing like these 5 people died, or it's a real story, because the first movie kind of said it was a real story, so this movie had to double down on the it's real. Ooh, it could be real, but it's also not at all. I mean, it's very, very loosely based off of Ed Gein, but that's a stretch to even say that.
Yeah.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Then we get some recently declassified crime scene footage.
There we go.
Which kind of, I will say, one thing I realized later, and I will bring it up when it comes back up, but there is some cool, like, foreshadowing here that I didn't quite expect as much as there's, like, moments where you see it later and you go, oh, that's how that got there. Which, to be fair, they bring it very directly, like, it's gonna matter, but, it did.
You mean like the claw marks on the
walls? Yeah, the claw marks, there's hair. And I was like, oh, okay, why are we talking about this? But, they do draw a lot of attention to it later, so.
Sure.
And then we kind of end that footage before anything important happens, and you're like, why is that classified? Nothing's happened. Well, you'll find out. It's for an ending sequence that's really kind of pointless. Before we head to our title card, which is on like a case file this time, which I thought was a cool looking title card. There was a different take on it. I respected it.
Yeah, I mean, this intro sequence is probably the best one that we've gotten since like the first one.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
they try to do something creative with it.
Yeah, there hasn't been much competition, but I agree.
Yeah, yeah. The competition was like text.
Yeah.
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 So
we meet our van load of kids. Woo, van load of kids. Woo. We get Erin, who is played by Jessica Biel. She's in this movie. We get Morgan, who I initially wrote is this movie's Franklin, because he really just gives off slightly Franklin vibes, but he is a completely...
There's really no Franklin in this movie.
He is the closest in the sense of being kind of grating and annoying, but he is, a stoner instead of being in a wheelchair, so he is different.
Instead of being, disabled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And might be her brother, according to at least wikis. Nothing in the movie made me think that, but the fan wikis give them the same last name, so I don't know if that's been confirmed in something, but... which would add to the, him being this movie's Franklin if they are supposed to be siblings. Then we also meet Andy, who is there, and Pepper, who is a
random hitchhiker
they picked up. As well as Kemper, who is played by Eric Balfour, who has done other work, but for me, and the reason I cared to bring up his name even, was he played the character Jesse in the 2-part pilot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He's only in those 2 episodes, but he's in those 2 episodes, so I thought that was really cool that he's here. Andy and Pepper are sucking face until Morgan is a real buzzkill and brings up the harmonica transmitted disease rate for their age range.
Yeah.
Which does kill the mood, and Pepper stops kissing Andy, which...
Effective.
Yeah, it did work, you know. But it's also like...
That
Why are you bringing that up, bro? Like, why are you being a jerk? Like, let him kiss. Gosh. But, you know, the answer is because they weren't listening to him. Because definitely in the van, he's very... I feel like supposed to be kind of that Franklin. He's the kind of annoying one who wants to be the center of attention while no one cares.
Yes.
This is also in this scene we find out that Pepper is a hitchhiker. They just picked up the day before because she like literally has a line as they're kissing like, "I didn't even know you yesterday." It's like, why are you guys making out then? But all right.
Yeah.
Exposition maybe.
Yeah, we get a lot of exposition in this scene because we also find out that they, at this point, all we know is that they probably picked up 2 pounds of pot in Mexico. But Kemper says he's not a drug mule, so it's definitely not that. Also, him and Aaron are definitely in a committed relationship. She wanted him to propose in Mexico, but he didn't. What a jerk.
Good face.
Then we also find out that they are on their way to a Skinner concert. That is basically all that matters for this first, 6 minutes. I'm not saying it in, a bad way, but for the sake of our notes. It is some character building you learn. You learn the characters, but that's pretty much the takeaways from this first van scene.
Lots of talking.
Yeah.
And then they drive past a girl on the side of the road. Whoa! Hitchhiker!
Yeah.
Here you go.
Be on the lookout, guys.
Yeah. They almost hit her.
Bad news.
And then Aaron and Pepper get out of the car and convince her to get in and go with them and to take her, and she's saying to take her home. But she's also didn't seem like she really wanted their help at first, but they just kind of pressure her. No, you're coming with us. I mean, don't get me wrong, she definitely seemed like she needed help. So yes, good on Aaron and Pepper. But she did not seem receptive, and they kind of just pushed until she eventually said, get in there. She eventually just got in the car. She didn't say anything because she's crazy.
Well, in shock, but
well, fine.
Same difference.
She's become crazy due to shock. In the van, the hitchhiker is crying a lot. I wonder why. I once want to cry, baby, ruining the mood.
Yeah,
another buzzkill.
Pepper and guy's name I forgot. Supposed to kiss
Andy.
Andy. Yeah, Andy.
Yeah.
Our Pepper and Andy supposed
That's
to
true.
kiss.
Well, they're not kissing anymore
Lion.
because they know about the, harmonica, the
It's
HTD
orange.
rates. So
Yeah.
But yeah, she's also whining about how they're all dead, and after a short while says that after she starts going you're going the wrong way, and she lunges toward the wheel. That makes Kemper slam on the brakes. She then proceeds to pull a gun out of her crotch that I guess she was storing up there for just a time like this. And then she shoots herself in the head.
Yeah.
And we get one of probably the most amazing shots in all of filmmaking. That sounds extreme, and it probably is. But it is definitely one of the... It is the best.
No, it is.
This is an amazing shot. As it goes back through her head in one take.
That is
mostly
cool.
Done in practical. No, it is amazing and deserves tons of credit.
Thanks, Michael Bay.
He wasn't actually directing. He was only producing, so he really wasn't that involved. Thanks, Marcus Nispel.
Nispel.
But yeah, it goes through her head. It's really cool. The only CGI in this scene at all is they have to put a little bit of the roof back in so they could hide the crane of the camera. So
that
it
is
could go
cool.
through the ceiling. This is all practical. This is one of literally one of probably the best camera work and stuff we have seen, period, due to the technical nature of what this is. This is technical marvel. But, Chris, I guess, doesn't like it, so that's fine.
I didn't say I didn't like it. Seemed a little overhyped.
It's, so, revolutionary the way they were able to pull this off.
Are we just getting a fraction of your opinion on the movie as a whole at this point, Chris? You're like,
Yeah, I'm just holding.
all right, sure.
Yeah.
Unusual. All right, yeah.
Where did we leave off?
The girl had just blown her head out.
Yeah. It also goes from the front of the
Disgusting.
car through her head, throughout the back of the window.
Correct.
Then I lost my place again somehow. There we are. This is being done by. This is where I'll bring up the cinematographer, or director of photography. I never know which word to use. Because, if you go to, IMDb, you'll click on the cinematographer tab, and then it'll call them the director of photography. And it's I don't know which one. But is Daniel Pearl, who was the cinematographer of the first movie, of the original, as well as the Friday the 13th remake, which are both movies, at the very least, I praised for looking beautiful. And I don't think this movie doesn't fall in that. That was a weird way of putting it. I think this movie also is beautiful, is my point I was trying to make, but said weirdly.
Really?
Yeah. There are some specific shots I will bring up when they happen, but there are some beautiful camera work and lighting and whatnot in this movie. I think Daniel Pearl is the best cinematographer we have seen. I'm not going to say this is the best movie we've seen. I'm not going to say any of the movies. I did like the Friday the 13th remake a lot. But I don't think any of the movies he's done are the best movie we've watched by any means. But I do think that his cinematography is the best cinematography we've seen. But that's my opinion. Because those three movies are really pretty. In a lot of macabre, gross ways at times, but still pretty. Pretty's probably not the word. Beautifully shot. For some reason, the word beautiful.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, beautiful doesn't have to be. Yeah, I don't know. You know what I'm saying. Maybe the audience also is following. Maybe they're not, and that's fair.
Well shot, one might say.
Well shot.
Yeah,
well
sure.
framed. It seems different from, certainly from the original. I mean, the technology of the camera is probably very different.
Right.
But in addition, it seemed like in this one, there is a lot of wibbly wobbliness on occasion, and a lot of the action taking place in the background. We'll have a blurry object in the foreground, we're looking through windows or leaves a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't a big fan of.
I didn't know if you had a point on what you meant, but that was there.
I just wasn't a big fan of it. I was waiting to see what you thought of it. I kind of like just the openness of the first one a lot more, personally.
I'm not saying that I think this movie was. I don't know. I do think this movie was. I don't know. I don't know my thoughts.
That's fine.
I didn't notice specifically that type of choosing to go with the background in focus, not the foreground. I didn't notice those shots, but I'm not saying they're not. I'm sure they were there. Those were the shots that stood out to me. But
my main problem really isn't it. It's mainly just the constant darkness and obscurity.
Yeah, the color grading did seem a little bit aggressive in this film a lot of the times. The dark places were really dark.
Very dark, yes.
Yeah.
To the point where sometimes you couldn't really tell what was happening. That was my main problem with as far as cinematography wise, just the color grading was for me.
It's fair.
But anyways, back to the movie part of the movie.
Yes, the story part, yeah.
Obviously, at this point, everyone freaks out and gets out of the van because a girl just shot herself in the head.
Yeah.
Fair reaction. Kemper thinks they need to call the cops, which Morgan points out is a bad idea because they're smuggling pot in from Mexico. In a pinata, which is cool. That's cool place to put your pot.
Especially in Texas in the 70s.
Yeah.
Valid concern.
Kemper, does the reasonable thing at this point. He ditches the pot by throwing it as far as he can into the field to get away from it. He doesn't. It's not worth it at this point. But at this point, Aaron is really mad at him because he, lied to her like 5 minutes ago about, if they were there to get pot. And now he's, smuggling 2 pounds of pot in, so he was probably there in Mexico to smuggle pot. So she's not very happy about that. And then this was another scene that I thought was shot beautifully, like in a way that it didn't deserve, because this scene wasn't that like interesting as a scene, but like the way like the lighting and the camera was on like the two of their faces, it just looked really pretty, and I don't think it deserved to be. Like, it is a weird shot that the scene I didn't care about, but this one shot was like strikingly beautiful in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like as he's like trying to be like, oh, I'm sorry, and it's just like I can't even describe what it looked like. It just looked more, I don't know, it just looked really pretty, and it shouldn't have, because it's these two random characters in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But yeah. Then they get back in the van. Right after I do want to say a kind of funny joke from, I think it's at this point, might be a little bit later, where Pepper says, "I will not get back in the van," and then we immediately cut to them in the van. I know that's some fun editing
Classic
humor, akin of Friday the 13th Part 6, where they'd go like, "Oh, what do I look like, an idiot?" and then cut to the kids yelling yes. This had similar vibes for me.
It was just missing some kind of like wacky kazoo based.
No, I think it didn't.
Song.
Actually, I think it was probably better for not having that.
That's a nice one.
And then Andy talks about how the brains look like lasagna.
And really poor taste, as everyone kind of just looks at him like, really?
Everyone's just really mad at him. And, it's fair. And they stop at a gas station, which also has, barbecue, as well as looks like a little corner store kind of thing. And at the gas station, the guys, there's an extra word there I put an extra A there for no reason. And so, I put it really close, so it said, the guys a get. And I was like, what's a get? What is this? The guys get the woman
the
working.
The guys a get to the grocery store, right?
The guys get the woman working at the gas station, whose name is Luda May, to call in the death to the sheriff. But they find out that they have to drive the dead body over to the old mill where the sheriff's at. Which is, how you typically do this,
Yeah, perfectly normal.
Take the crime scene to the cops.
Well, when you're on a mobile crime scene, you can take it wherever you need to go.
For your convenience, yeah.
This was the era, before phones. So, nowadays you would stop and not move your car and you'd call there, but you didn't have a cell phone. So you had to go to the gas station and then to the old mill if you wanted to turn in a body.
I think this could have just gone to the gas station.
What?
Yeah, I don't know about step 2 of that process, I gotta say.
No, that's part of the process.
The old mill.
Everyone goes to the old mill.
Check the penal code, it's in there.
Yeah.
That's where you go to report dead bodies.
Old mill.
Yeah, you understand. You guys understand. That's how it works. Once at the mill, the guys want to just dump the body and leave, while the girls want to stay and wait for the sheriff because it's the right thing to do. I mean,
ultimately not, but
at
that point,
on paper,
morally,
it
seems
is
the right
the
thing.
more moral thing to do.
Yeah.
It was the wrong decision, but it was the morally right thing to do.
Yeah.
But, as Morgan points out, was the girl shooting herself in their van the morally right thing to do?
Yeah. Morgan is kind of the voice of reason, but he does it in an annoying way where you don't want to respect him. So, and Erin, though, she gives like the girlfriend defense, basically, of like, you do this, you vote, Kemper, you haven't officially voted, you vote for my side or else. You're already on thin ice for the pot, so maybe make the right choice on this body. And he does, for the sake of their relationship.
He smuggled the pot so that they could start a new life together.
He does try to throw that line in at one point in that really pretty shot. And
that was their starter home that he just tossed into the field.
Yeah. And she had none of that excuse. But yeah, so they decide to stay. And while they're waiting for the sheriff, they kind of go wandering around and they find this like entrance to the mill, and they're just kind of sitting around talking, and then they all see some random figure run past, and so, what could that be? The answer is it's Jedediah, but we don't know that yet.
There is also like a bunch of really creepy like dolls and stuff set up around that none of them seem to be bothered by that much. Which is interesting to me.
You know, Texas in the 70s was a different place. You know,
I don't know if it was.
There were creepy witch mobiles everywhere,
were you
just
alive
dangling.
In the 70s, Chris? Then you don't know.
Different time.
You can take an educated guess, sure, but you don't know.
I can just see weird babies, dolls pinned up and dressed up all weird all the time.
Bone bundles dangling from things.
They're a dime a dozen.
Well, if you're in a small town at the old mill, it is. Everyone knows that's what old mills look like.
That is the crime hotspot. That's where you take your crime.
Yeah. Take your crimes to the old mill. The cop will show up for you.
Yeah.
And then, no, everyone's kind of freaked out by it, but, Erin just says, whatever, I'll go inside and figure out what this is. She goes inside to investigate, and then she screams, which brings everyone in, and they all end up getting jump scared by a possum. It's the classic misdirect of open a door and it's not something scary.
Yeah.
Fun fact. Yes, the cat. I was expecting a cat. Then it was a possum. I was like, oh, okay, it's a possum. Fun fact about the possum is it took like a lot of takes because the possum kept just looking adorable. They wanted it to look really scary, but it just kind of kept sitting there like a possum, not doing anything. And I think it was the director was telling the story about how like the animal wrangler was like, haven't you ever heard like the phrase as like, dead as a possum? Like, it's because they play dead. It's not going to act. And yeah, eventually they were able to get like a shot.
The camera loves me. I mean, yeah.
They tickled the possum and it went, ah.
Yeah. But then, there's some more noise and they realize that possum wasn't the giant thing that ran past them, obviously. I don't know why they would have ever even had a moment of reprieve. That definitely was not what they saw. Possum? Yeah. That little possum was definitely not the giant, not giant, but much bigger than a possum-sized shape they saw run past them.
Yeah.
But they follow these noises and they find a little boy named Jedediah who has some of the worst fake teeth I have ever seen.
Yeah.
Pretty bad. I didn't write down the kid actor's name. He does a completely solid job as a kid actor. He does not take me out of any of his scenes, but his fake teeth do. Where I go, oh my gosh, those are bad. Like they look so teeth. Bigger than his mouth. Yeah, it is. Chris is doing it, trying to do a explanation
tooth
of
impression.
Visual for our podcast listeners. He was sticking his teeth out.
Yeah.
Now Isaiah's doing it because apparently that's the bit now. We're gonna move on though.
All I'm saying is I'd make an excellent Hewitt.
Sure. Jed tells them that the sheriff is probably at home getting drunk, and that they can't take a road to get there. They have to go walk there. And it's a short walk though. So Erin and Kemper head to go to the sheriff's house, and this is another scene that it's one of the last ones that I feel like really stood out as oh my gosh beautiful. Is the way the light cuts through the trees in this scene is like out of a painting, and it's partially because I believe the director was a former painter. Like he wanted to like kind of get that kind of effects with the light. Like, but the way the light cuts through on these trees is just it's stunning. That's probably the last time I'm going to specifically, mention any cinematography. That's the last thing I specifically remember being like, oh, wow, that's good. But I personally thought the whole movie was pretty. I can see the complaint about the color grading. That was very much a decision. I remember them mentioning it on the podcast. There was some sort of, I don't remember, I'm not, once again, not a camera guy. I don't know everything. But there was some part of the process, like bleaching of something that they didn't do because they didn't want the blues and greens to be super bright. They wanted them to be really saturated and dark. They wanted the darks to be darker. I mean, sounds like you guys didn't like it, and that's fair. And so I guess it was a gamble that did not work for them.
I might have an entirely different opinion of it if I had not gotten an Instagram for like a few months in the ninth grade and seen everybody do exactly that to their photos. And so that's what I associate it with is like
That's
uh
fair.
sepia
To be
or whatever
fair,
the name of the filter was,
to
like
be fair, this movie came out like
2014 Instagram.
5 or 6 years before Instagram, so
Good point.
they were
Good
copying
point.
this movie. They just didn't know it. Those 12-year-old girls who had never seen this movie had no idea what they were doing. But yeah, they go through the really pretty forest. I lost my place again.
And arrive at the Hewitt residence.
Yes, but yeah. Well, we don't know it's the Hewitt residence. Yes, yeah, house. Yeah, we think it's the sheriff's house, but we find out that as of right now, we're told it's not because at the house we find out from old Monty that it is not. Sheriff doesn't live here. Monty, who is played by Terrence Evans, who he's 6'5", and had to. The movie didn't really have like the budget to like digitally take out his legs the whole time, like other movies with bigger budgets. So they had to like build his legs into the set, or like the chair he was sitting on had to be like him kneeling the whole time.
Dude.
Which at first the director was really worried about. He's like, you're kind of older. Are you gonna be able to kneel for that long all the time? And he was told him like, it's no problem. I used to lay carpet for a living. I'm used to kneeling all day. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, he had also, like I mentioned there, the character has no legs. And he has a little dog that really never comes into the point of the plot that much, but it's just kind of cute. It's just kind of here. Doesn't have a name. I really tried to find a name. Like, there's not any, like, fan names out there. Like, I looked, like, on the wikis and stuff. There is no name for the dog. I was very disappointed. I wanted there to be a name for the dog. But there's no name for the dog, sadly. He's just dog, I guess. And he tells him that the sheriff doesn't live there. I already said that, but it was in my notes after that, so I forgot that I said that. But he did tell Erin that she could call him, but Kemper, he has to wait outside. Also, I want to say credit to Kemper and Erin. They did not break and enter into this house the second they got there. They knocked and waited, like you're supposed to.
It's true.
They don't deserve what comes to them. Unlike the victims in the first movie, who deserved everything they
absolutely
got.
asked for it.
Yeah, they were home invaders and Leatherface was protecting his house. This movie, not the case. But yeah, while they're there, while she's making the call, Sheriff Hoyt shows up at the mill. And this is where we'll mention that Sheriff Hoyt is played by Arlie Ermey, who is probably most famous for his role in Full Metal Jacket as the drill sergeant. But for, millennials / Gen Z kids like me, he is Sarge from Toy Story, and that is who he is. And even though he is playing that character is a parody of his other character that was more famous, that's what I think of him as.
And he was in that Geico commercial where he throws the Kleenex box.
That is true.
Sure. Because I'm sure that's on the top of his resume. He's like, did you know I was in a Geico commercial? They're like, you're Arlie Ermey. I mean, he's actually, I believe, sadly passed away, so he's not having these meetings anymore like this. But at some point when he was still alive, he did. He's like, I was in a Geico commercial once, and they're like, you were in Full Metal Jacket and an amazing performance that everyone praises and loves. But have you seen the Geico commercial?
Huh. Apparently, he was also actually a Marine drill instructor.
Huh.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, he basically just kind of shows up at the mill, and I think this is the first instance where we see him just kind of being a jerk, because he's kind of a jerk even before we know he's evil. I mean, it's, once again, like we've said the last couple ones, it's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, so you kind of expect everyone you meet to be evil. Even if this is a remake that could change it up, you still kind of go, everyone's gonna be bad, because it's a Texas Chainsaw film. Unless they're the obvious heroes, they're probably bad people.
That's a good point. This is a big twist that one of our bad guys is not all benevolent and altruistic right off the bat. He's just a major douche immediately.
Yeah,
that is not the pattern that we've seen so far.
I mean, kind of is though, because I'd say that like the first movie has the hitchhiker who is immediately kind of crazy and not good. It's like it is. Don't get me wrong, they're completely different styles of characters for sure, but that is another like villain that you immediately go, he's got bad vibes immediately.
It's a good point. Yeah.
But he is also a Hewitt, not Sheriff Hoyt. It's a lie. Can you believe it? Can you believe he lied? Yeah, well, we're back to the house. And after finishing the call, Erin hears Monty call for help, and she goes into the bathroom. While she's trying to pick him up, a shadowy figure crosses the camera. Ooh, who could that be? It's Leatherface.
Oh.
Spoiler. Oh, sorry. Leatherface is in this movie. I know. I would have thought they would have kept him out. It's a remake. Let's do something different. Come on. Let's do leather pants or something. I don't know, something different.
Leather pants.
He just wears human skin pants.
Leather elbow.
Yeah, leather elbow. Yeah. But no, that's Leatherface. Also, I don't remember if it's this part of the scene or it's when we cut back to this scene, but at some point, Monty is definitely like grabbing himself some...
He's grabbing and groping.
Yeah, he is taking advantage of the situation. He's never called out on it even in the movie, but like there's definitely, like, you could tell. He is trying to grab that Jessica Biel butt. And you know, it is a nice butt, but it's still wrong to grab without permission. That is the moral of the story. That is the hard stance I'm taking. It is bad to grope people without their permission. I know it's crazy for me to even have to say that. But yeah, where was I? And then we cut back to the van where Hoyt seems kind of happy at the carnage. Like he's very like into seeing this dead body. He's excited about it. And has he also has a holster on his ankle that looks like it's perfectly shaped for the gun that she killed herself with, which kind of makes you wonder, like, is that his gun that she somehow got? Ooh.
One wonders.
Yeah. They never directly say, so you just keep wondering, but it does give...
Yeah.
That was what I took from this scene was, it must be his gun. Yeah, and then we cut back to the house where this is okay. Apparently, this is the point where it's really obvious because right at this point I say Monty is copping a feel on Jessica Biel. That's a good line. I'm glad I read that because that is a good one.
Dude, should have put that one up front.
How many gold?
Copping a feel on Jessica Biel. Then Kemper gets kind of mad about being. He gets tired of waiting. Actually, that happened earlier before we cut back, but I forgot to mention. Apparently, I read over that. But yeah, Kemper came inside, and while he's inside now, we come back to him, and he finds just some pigs in the living room. You know, I think he says it's a pigsty. A little on the nose there, but you know, he's not wrong. Then he keeps exploring, and the house is. This is kind of the point where the house is very like, it's less creepy than the first movie, but I believe slightly more inspired by actual like photos of like Ed Gein's house. So I think that's what they were going for more here, was a little bit more realistic look, but instead it just kind of comes across as not as weird and macabre as the original.
Yeah, it's certainly not as well composed.
Yeah.
It's kind of thrown together.
Yeah.
That's the impression I got.
And while he kind of finishes exploring, he finds this room that has this like bell chime on it that looks like a charm bracelet basically when it falls off, but I think it makes bell noises, so I guess it's I don't know what it is, what's hanging on this wall, but he knocks it down, and as he goes down to pick it up, out pops Leatherface, who shows up behind him and hits him with a hammer, spraying his blood on the TV, which was another really pretty shot. So I lied. There was another moment that I wanted to say, and the thing I thought was really cool looking was when the blood spurted on the TV. I was like, oh, that's cool. Because it was also like cartoons playing, so it's just like that real like juxtaposition of this old-timey cartoon with blood splattering on it. Those typically don't go together.
Typically, no.
This is also where I'll bring up who plays Leatherface. Leatherface is played by Andrew Briniaski, who is what was I saying? The other fun little story is how he got his job. Was he was at like after the movie had been announced, he was at like a party with Michael Bay, and like he went up to him and was like, "I need to play Leatherface," and then he ended up getting the role.
Dude.
And he
That's incredible.
Very much takes this role very seriously. Like when I was listening to the interviews, he kind of reminded me very similar to like Derek Mears from the Friday the 13th reboot of someone who just loved the character and really wanted to play it. I will say he did seem a little almost too enthusiastic, like almost to a point of where you're like, okay, settle down, dude, settle down just a little bit. But yeah,
I envisioned the actions I would carry out in this movie night and day.
And considering we're seeing Leatherface, I think this is also the time to bring up our special effects makeup artist, because one of the biggest things they do in these movies is like the masks and stuff. So our makeup artist is Scott Stoddard. That's it. That's it for that. Yeah. And then we cut back to where we were before I told you about Leatherface. And after Leatherface hits him, Leatherface drags him across the room before slamming a sliding metal door. Woo!
There it is, metal door.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, they did it. They did the thing.
That somehow Erin doesn't hear. Well,
no, she does.
She does.
Yeah, this is what like makes her react.
Yeah.
No, she literally hears it. Yeah, literally, my next note is Erin hears this. Like, I wish it was like, it's not like, oh, this is the next season. My literal note is Erin hears this, and you're like, somehow Erin doesn't hear this.
Just for comedic effect.
Yeah, Erin hears this and goes to see what happened. She looks around for a little bit. I believe this, in this scene of like kind of her looking around, trying to figure out what happened. There is like, she finds like this peephole.
In the giant sliding metal door.
Yeah, in this giant sliding door, there's this peephole, and she kind of like, there's this weird shot of her like looking into it, like from like the point of view of the person at the peephole. It felt like they really wanted this scene to mean something. I didn't get what they were going for with this peephole scene, but it definitely felt like they spent a lot of time on it. Like, I feel like I was supposed to feel something here, but I just was more like, okay, it's kind of a weird looking, like, you know, like, this shot looks weird because it's coming through a peephole. All right, cool.
The only thing that would occur to me is, I mean, this almost seems too obvious to note, but it might just be pointing out, you know, oh, this is the perspective. Like, we're meant to relate as the audience to her, like, frightened but still, you know, craving to see Leatherface.
I guess. I feel like it would make more sense if we were seeing it from her perspective then, but we see it from Leatherface's perspective, actually. Because we're seeing her through the peephole, which means we are Leatherface in that scene.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is definitely not, I think, a message this movie ever was trying to put you in his shoes, so I don't get it. It's just, that would be a shot I'd respect if you were seeing it from her point of view. I'd agree on that, but we're not.
He is the hero of this movie.
No, that was last episode's bit. We're done with that.
Oh, yeah.
No, he's not. No, he's,
the bits,
especially in this movie, he's just kind of mean. He doesn't really, like, have any redeeming, like, I don't know, like, his redeeming quality in, like, the first movie was that you go, hey, he's abused and special needs, maybe he doesn't realize what he's doing. This Leatherface just seems mean, like, mean and gritty, and like maybe even get some joy out of what he's doing. Which, once again, from the interviews, is the way that, you know, Andrew was trying to play him. He was trying to be like, this is a more mean Leatherface. I'm like, okay, I mean, I kind of like, one of my biggest, like, pros from the first movie was the, like, sympathetic villain. But okay, yeah, let's get rid of that entirely. Sure, Andrew. That's a great take on it. You gotta be careful though, because like I said, he takes this really seriously. Somehow he'll find this and get mad at me for saying that. You're the best Leatherface. We cut back to the van, and Sheriff Hoyt is making Andy help him wrap up the body, like with saran wrap, and he's being real creepy here. I'm not. There are certain lines I literally will never repeat, but they are disgusting. in a way that I respect.
Chopping feels corpses.
On corpses.
They are, and it's disgusting in a way that I completely respect because that's what they wanted. They wanted you to go, oh, stop it, Hoyt. And, it worked.
Yeah.
Then Hoyt has Andy and Morgan load the body into his trunk. There's actually, once again, kind of this movie has a lot less of it, I feel like, but does have a couple, dark comedic moments where he, is just having a conversation with Pepper about respecting the dead, and then immediately is like, don't you put it in the back seat, put it in the trunk. And I like that. So yeah, he has that loader in the trunk. Now we cut back to Erin, who is going through the really pretty woods on her way back to the mill. They're still really pretty. The light's still coming through those trees in a beautiful way that it's just beautiful. Especially that's there are other parts of the movie where I go oh, it's that weird way I was trying to define beautiful earlier, well shot. This is literally just beautiful. The way this light is coming through is it's literally art in the middle of a movie that I would not describe as art. But still, this one, I don't know. Actually, I hate when people use art in that term because I've actually had this discussion. I don't know if I've ever had it on the podcast, but I think all movies are art, even the worst ones, because that's kind of the whole point of art is subjective and everything is art. That's kind of why I hate the term art used as a meaning for good.
Only good art?
Yeah, when people say master, if you want to say it's a masterpiece, sure, that is something that's good. But if a kid does a finger painting, that's also art. Is it going to win awards? No, but it's still art. So, this movie is art, and so was last week's movie. I don't respect last week's movie's art, but it was art. Where was I? I got on a little side tangent because I didn't like the word I used.
Austin got in an argument with Austin for 2 minutes.
Basically, I was like, no, Austin, you don't like when art's used that way. Why are you doing it? Because it's what people do. Then after that, we cut to a scene of Leatherface in his little workshop where he's prepping some meat hooks, a sewing needle, and is cutting off Kemper's shirt. That's just a little, not fun fact, but just kind of fact that kind of proves the point of Andrew took this too seriously, was that in this, the interviews, one of the things that the actor who played Kemper, I think his name's Eric, was saying that, oh yeah, he was just, really, almost cutting my back because he just was getting too into it and not listening. It's what are you doing? So, I don't know, maybe take it a little less seriously, Andrew.
Method acting.
But no, the best part is it literally cuts to a moment of him talking about how, I could do method acting for this because, I would need people to, be able to respect and listen to me. Right after someone's accusing him, basically, that's actually kind of a great little moment in the documentary because there's someone basically accusing him of getting too into it method-wise, and then him being like, I could never do method acting for this role.
Some nice editing humor there.
It really was.
That means it wasn't the character, it was just him.
Yeah.
I don't
know. Andrew's a guy that he confuses me. Then we cut back to Erin, who makes it back to the van, and she realizes Kemper isn't there. So the gang goes off to look for him. They find some old
gang. Well, oh yeah, they don't split up yet.
No, they're all still together right now.
Split up gang.
Yeah.
They go to look around the old mill.
Yeah. I think specifically why they all go is because they hear a car horn. They go and they inspect that. They find there's a stick that's making a car horn go off. Then they find some teeth on the ground. Then Morgan decides to play a little joke where he pretends to get his arm pulled into a hole in a trunk. Just for funsies, a friend of yours is missing, and you're like, isn't this the time for my comedy? I'm Morgan.
Epic prank.
Once again, Morgan is a bad character. I don't like Morgan. But yeah, so eventually he reveals that he wasn't actually stuck, and he pulls out this jar that has a picture in it that looks like it's a family, and in this picture is also, on the back of it at least, or I think she's also in the group shot, is the hitchhiker girl. Ooh.
Ah.
Also, the jar is full of a liquid. Looks like it might be pee. Might not be. Don't know what it's supposed to be. Moonshine? Who knows? I don't know what it's supposed to be. It doesn't ever come into play. And there's no real reaction to, why is her picture in a jar? It's just, hey, that's the girl. Which, like, I guess is the more important, like, fact. But that feels more like if I was, like, writing the notes for the movie and I was like, oh, yeah, they find her picture. But instead the, like, script also went, oh, they find her picture in the jar.
Being embalmed in urine,
yeah, or something.
evidently.
Yeah, who knows?
Yes, this raised a lot of questions that ended up not mattering at all.
Literally never comes into play.
It's just like that's one of my problems with the movie mainly. We can get into it more at the end, but like it seems to want to establish a general feeling and not really go much more than that. Like, it'd be creepy is if they found this picture, but it was, floating in some fluid.
It was a pee jar.
And who put it there? Why is it that doesn't? None of that matters. This is the ambiance of the whole Leatherface playground. You
understand.
Yeah.
Then around this point, after the teeth and the jar, Pepper's kind of had enough of this. So is Morgan. So they want to not just kind of leave Kemper here, which I get for Pepper. Like, Pepper doesn't even know these people. That's a fair reaction from her. But Morgan might be, like, at the very least friends with Kemper, but might be, the future brother-in-law, hopefully, for, like, in this world. Like, if he's actually, like, but he's just like, no, leave him for dead. We don't care.
Yeah.
Give me the van keys. And Aaron's like, no, you can leave, but you're not getting the van. So they just go and head back to the van while Andy, a good friend, sticks with Aaron to look for Kemper. Who is dead at this point, so there's no point. But they don't know that.
They don't know that. So now we go back through the woods.
Yeah. While they're kind of like going through the woods, we cut back to Leatherface's workshop, who has hung Kemper by his feet. And as he hangs him by his feet, out falls an engagement ring from Kemper. Aww. He was going to propose to her. He's dead now, but he was going to propose to her. That is... It's the nice closing moment for basically the Kemper story, because, Kemper is dead at this point pretty obviously. And it's like, aw, he was going... Maybe he was going to propose while Freebird played at the Skinner concert.
Right in the peak of that solo, the tapping part, yeah.
Now we cut back to, Andy and Aaron, who are showing up, and they have a plan where Andy's going to sneak in the house while Aaron is going to distract Monty. Then we get another time in this movie where they try to recreate something but don't do it as well, which is really kind of ironic when it's literally the same cinematographer. You think he could do it as well. We have a much less... It's weird to being brought attention to it because it's literally, once again, the low angle butt shot of the camera angle, but it doesn't feel as artsy. Like, the first one felt like there was a point. Like, it was like supposed to like look at this like cinematography in this really low angle shot. This one like starts kind of close on her butt and then goes low for like 3 seconds. Be like, hey, remember that?
Dude, I had forgotten.
Got a body.
We've got a couple movies without talking about the low angle butt shot.
Because it actually hasn't come into play as much as I expected it. I thought it was something they recreated in all the movies, but it looks like this is the first time they recreated it. And they just didn't do it as well. Like, I'm not going to deny the fact that, Jessica Biel might have a better butt than the girl from the first movie, but it wasn't as artistically shot. I
like to imagine that Michael Bay personally, like, stormed in and requested this.
He probably didn't for this, but we could, there are some definite moments later where I feel like they happen because she's hot and we wanted to justify it. Like, I don't know, why does the sprinkler go off while she's wearing a white cotton t-shirt?
A valid question.
Like, especially because they're about to go outside in the rain where we could get that wet shirt in that shot where it would make sense. But that's really... We're not there yet, but I'll bring it up here because he brought up, like, objectifying Jessica Biel's body for the sake of objectifying Jessica Biel's body.
Just for the heck of it,
like, that scene made no sense. It literally... There was no point in it. This one, you could at least say, like, oh, they're paying homage. That's the point. where were we? So yeah, she's distracting Monty, and Eric. She has some very like casual small talk with him, trying to distract him. She literally like starts complimenting his garden. And this is while Andy is looking around inside. Andy walks his way into the kitchen, which has a bunch of meat and a pair of bloody pantyhose hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah.
I want to say that, at least on the documentary, and I don't know if it was actually them saying, or maybe it was one of the videos I watched, maybe they were supposed to, the implication was they were pantyhose made out of skin. I didn't get that, but maybe that was supposed to also be something we were supposed to get there. This is the point where I'm going to just kind of rattle off a bunch of people who might be, who deserve some credit for this movie, who might be important here. I don't quite understand any of their specific job descriptions, so I'll just read them all here. We have our art director, who is Scott Gallagher. We have our production designer, who is Greg Blair. And we have our set decorator, who is Randy Hale? Might be Hake. I can't tell what I wrote. I'm sorry if it's not one of those. But yeah, credit to those three guys. I feel like they all probably had at least some say in how some of the scenes in this movie look like. Like I said, I don't think they did a good a job of like set dressing as the original, but I do think it did do a really good job. Like if we weren't comparing it to the original, I would say like, oh, it had a nice creepy vibe to a lot of it. So yeah. And while he's in there, we have a shot of Leatherface watching through a hole in the wall. Not the peephole, just a giant hole where he's like watching through it. Like a giant, you can see the whole half of his mask. Which kind of begs the question of why he had ever used peephole if there's just giant holes for him to look through.
All those different moods.
Yeah. Then Andy is like going through the fridge and he accidentally knocks something off the top of it. Which causes a very loud noise that Erin hears. She does hear this one too, Chris. I want to make sure you understand. Erin does hear this.
Well, Erin and Guy.
That's Monty. And then she runs in to check on him, and then Monty comes in as well, and is kind of using terminology that kind of, I don't remember exact words he used, but it was definitely like literally foreshadowing for the scene we're about to see of him being like, "You're gonna get it." Like in a way, in the wording he used was very much like trying to signal Leatherface, as well as like he was hitting his cane on the floor repeatedly, like also seemingly to like get Leatherface's attention, like, "Hey, Leatherface, do your Leatherface thing."
Yeah, it's leathering time.
Yeah, it's time to
leather. And then he does. That's it, and then he does.
Yeah, and Leatherface.
Leather he does.
Yeah. Leatherface opens the sliding door and has his chainsaw. Woo! Chainsaw Massacre! Bang! Erin closes the kitchen door on him, but it ends up being like literally pointless because like no one gets away. It doesn't even help them for like a second. It's just literally prolongs the scene. Like it's not like she closed the door and starts to run. She closed the door and tries to hold it while Andy trips. So literally, it's just adding a couple seconds. So yeah, he busts through, and then Erin runs away as she kind of like pushes Monty out of the way because Monty's wheelchair was on top of the lug wrench.
Tire iron.
It's a lug wrench, actually. I thought it was a tire iron too. Someone in a video said lug wrench. I looked it up. It is definitely a lug wrench. I also assumed it's tire iron, and but that's because I know nothing about cars. And I looked up, I was like, oh, tire iron. And then I looked it up, and it was like, and then I looked up this person had lug wrench in the video, and I was like, huh, lug wrench. And I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly a picture of a lug wrench. It's that weird.
Lug wrench is just like the proper name for what people call a tire.
It may be. That could be a case. Maybe they're interchangeable. I don't know enough about cars to know.
There's also plenty of pictures of four-way tire irons, so I think, yeah, they are the same thing.
Okay. I was not trying to like correct you. I was more saying like I thought I made the same mistake, but hey, I know nothing about cars. So yeah, he gets to pick up his lug wrench tire iron as she pushes Monty out of the way because Monty's wheelchair was on top of it, and he turns around right in time to stop the chainsaw with the lug wrench tire iron. Andy then is able to use that as a chance to run away. Leatherface destroys the front door. No one says, "Look what you did to the door." Disappointed.
Not one, dude.
I feel like there is kind of an implication that later, spoiler, well, not really. I say that mostly as a joke at this point, but Sheriff Hoyt, I believe, is Leatherface's brother. I think that's the implication with the fact that they both call the same person mom.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to tell. Like,
once again, it could not be, but I'm going to go with that. You could have had mom say, "Look what your brother did to the door," but she didn't. I'm disappointed. Luda May should have said that line. They didn't do it, but he does destroy the door. He bursts through it. He just barrels through it. Kind of, Kool-Aid Man-esque, but with a little help from the chainsaw.
I could improve the Kool-Aid Man, frankly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And then we have a kind of disorienting chase scene in a good way. It's a word that could be used as bad, but I mean mostly for the character. And kind of a little bit for us, as they kind of do this little chase scene into some these hanging sheets, a bunch of what's the word? Clothesline. What's the word for that?
Clotheslines.
Yeah, clotheslines. Where there's just a bunch of sheets hanging. I guess it was laundry day. And there's all these sheets, and there's you don't know where anyone is for a little bit there, and then out of nowhere, Leatherface pops out at Andy, and chainsaw his leg off.
Just whoop right through.
In a mostly once again mostly practical effect. It's obviously he didn't actually chainsaw his leg off, but there's a fake leg that they had one take on because it took a lot of work to make it, and they got it, and it looks
the same
good.
leg.
Yeah, they only had one leg,
dude.
so it was just one shot. They had one shot, one opportunity. His knees are now weak.
Arms are heavy.
Spaghetti.
Already.
Yeah.
No, it's lasagna. It's lasagna, actually.
Yes.
Lasagna already.
A more appropriate comparison. Yeah.
But yeah, he chainsaws his leg right under the knee. Then he starts to carry him down to the basement, and Andy leaves scratch marks on the wall. Ooh, those were foreshadowed. Mm-hmm. Got itch on my nose. It's really annoying. And then we see a shot of the mailbox that confirms that Leatherface's family name is now Hewitt.
For reasons.
Once again, though, I mean, if this is a remake of the original they didn't even have a name, so I'm fine. I am fine with it.
That's a good point, actually.
But there is an element of the fans love the name Sawyer. You could have just done the name Sawyer, but they did Hewitt.
And Sawyer's so perfect for a guy wielding a saw.
Yeah, saw is in the name. It makes so much more sense. But they're the Hewitts now.
Well, I guess he used,
Yes.
That's all right too. I'll accept
it. Everyone knows that Monty used to work in the IT department. Even though the IT department did not exist in '73, let alone when he would have been young enough to be working in it in the '60s.
He was feeding cards into computers the size of rooms at Dell.
Totally. Then Erin gets back at the van, and she's freaking out, but it won't start. Then Sheriff Hoyt shows up to save the day. But, actually, rather than that, and rather than listening to her at all as she tries to tell him, he notices that they have some joints in their ashtray, and he orders Erin, Pepper, and Morgan out of the van and onto the ground. We head back to Leatherface's workshop, which we now find out is in the basement, because we saw as he pulled Andy down. We didn't know the first time we saw it, but now we know it's the basement going forward. And Leather puts Andy on a meat hook, and then in a genuinely gruesome but very simple scene, he puts salt all over the stump, which causes Andy to let out this really weird scream. It is one of the weirdest screams I've ever heard. But it is really just cool to see him do that, because he doesn't even finish there, because he then wraps it with meat packing paper, which
and ties it up.
Yeah, and I just thought that was really cool, because it ties into maybe
the cannibalism thing.
Yeah, it just
I
thought it was also putting salt in wounds is an old I think it's the Viet Cong war tactic, because it hurts like heck. So it also hurts as well as does save the meat. But yeah. Then we head back to the van, and Aaron finally gets out that someone with a chainsaw is killing people, but Hoyt just doesn't seem to believe her or care. He kind of more goes, someone killed people, you're admitting it finally. And it's like, that's not what she said at all, but alright, Hoyt, I feel like you have an agenda here, Hoyt.
I'm figuring Hoyt out.
I don't know if this, I'm not sure, but I think this Hoyt guy, he might not be good.
No,
a little sus.
I don't think he's an upstanding.
He might not be the hero of the movie.
Might
not. It's kind of like in the first movie where I'm like half ready to call the cops on him.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, and he ends this part of the scene with he wants Morgan to show him what happened to the hitchhiker. What could that mean? Well, we cut back to the house with Leatherface, who sews together a new Kemper skin mask. Ooh, stylish, fancy. And we also get a reveal of his mangled face as he removes his old mask. I believe this is, from my understanding, this is the only time we ever see his face in like the whole franchise. That's
Dude,
what
yes.
they said during the documentary. I don't know, that was before a couple other movies, so there's a chance, like, I haven't seen the newest Leatherface. Maybe we see his face a little bit in that one. Or not like, but the newest Texas Chainsaw. But
that's a good. I haven't seen that one either, actually. But yeah, I remember thinking like, I wasn't exactly waiting for this to happen, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like with Jason, it was just so expected. I wanted every movie like, okay, the new Jason face. Yeah. Here we go. And it's kind of like the mask is what we're here to see in this one.
Yeah,
you know?
Because it is his face also. Like there's a lot more of like, I feel like. Once again, I'm no Isaiah, so I don't have as much knowledge of good psychology and whatnot like he can bring in with this. But I feel like there's like an element of like Jason is hiding himself with a mask while Leatherface is the mask. Like
he's like expressing himself with the mask.
He is at this point compared to Jason, who is ashamed of himself and covering it. Maybe. But also, I'm probably giving more intellectual thought that either franchise ever actually did with the why we didn't. It was just, I don't know, Leatherface has a cool mask. I don't know, who knows what's under there? We don't care.
Who knows what's under there?
Toby Hooper's like, nothing. He's got a Leatherface. Deal with it.
He's got a
He drank his Dr. Pepper and took a hit of his stogie.
I like that theory, though. I'm going to steal it and pass it off as my own.
Then we have this like scene that it's a little bit longer, and I'm not going to do it justice, but we have this amazingly intense scene as Sheriff Hoyt makes Morgan reenact the hitchhiker's death. Like it's very like this is some great acting on both parts. Specifically, R. Lee Ermey. You see why he's so famous because he is the vitriol that's coming out of him as he's trying to get him to do this. I also want to give credit to actor Jonathan Tucker, who is the one who plays Morgan, because especially for this scene, because during this scene, an idea he had come up with that he wanted to do was, while the gun's like being forced into his mouth, is due to like the fear and it maybe hitting his gag reflexes, puke. So he did. In all 25 takes, he just kept making himself puke, and like beyond respect to have that much dedication to it. And you kind of see it like when he pulls the gun out of his mouth at the end, like you see some like gunk come out of his mouth, and apparently that's legitimate vomit.
Ridiculous, dude.
Because at the end of the scene, after he has it in his mouth, and we're at the point where R. Lee Ermey's Hoyt is basically saying like, you pull that trigger now. Like I don't see she hasn't. You're saying that's how she died, but no one's pulled a trigger yet. So then he gets distracted for like a second, and it gives Morgan the chance to pull the gun onto Hoyt. And after a kind of prolonged scene of him freaking out, and both Aaron screaming "Don't do it" and Pepper screaming "Do it," he eventually does do it. He pulls the trigger, but the gun isn't loaded because Hoyt isn't actually a bad guy, and he didn't want him to actually kill himself. He just wanted to see what it looked like because he doesn't have a good imagination.
You wanted him to find his inner strength. It's a rite of passage.
Actually, no. He is a very bad guy, and he wanted him to be very scared. And then he pulls out a loaded gun, and points it at, Well, I guess we don't know if it's loaded. We never see this gun. No,
we assume.
No, we might see it fire. Because earlier, before he pulls into the car, he does shoot a gun at the ground near them. So maybe this is that gun. Maybe the gun he put in his mouth was loaded at one point. Who knows? It doesn't matter. The point is he points a gun at him, and now Morgan, is no longer in the upper hand because he has an empty gun, and a gun is pointed at him. So the sheriff leads Morgan away from the van at gunpoint into... we find out in the next scene that it's to his cop car. At this point, we just see them walk off. Then we head back to the basement, and Andy tries to pull himself off the meat hook, but slips on this wet pipe and drives it deeper into his back.
Dude, yeah.
At the moment, you think, brutal. He must be dead now. No. He's not dead yet. Gosh, doesn't want to die. Then we head to the police car, where Hoyt asks Morgan where they were going. And Morgan says they were going to a Skinner concert in Dallas. Hoyt says that, they have something in common there. Because he also liked Skinner. Then when Morgan...
He's like, hell, I like Skinner.
Yeah. Then Morgan tries to, offer him the tickets. Because he asks, what are you going to do with those tickets now? And he's like, oh, you can have them. And then Hoyt gets mad at him for trying to bribe him. So he smashes him with a liquor bottle and knocks out some of Morgan's teeth. And he pulls out his own fake teeth and goes, oh, we got something else in common now.
Dude, it was I love Arlie Ermey in this movie.
Yeah, I love Arlie Ermey in this whole movie. He is definitely the star of this movie. Followed, honestly, pretty closely by Jessica Biel. She does a good job at what she's doing. But Arlie Ermey is definitely falls into that pantheon of great family members who steal the show in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film.
Yeah, honestly.
Back at the van, Erin uses some knowledge she has from Juvie to hotwire the van. Hoyt, we cut back to Hoyt. She's starting to hotwire the van. She doesn't quite get it going yet. When we cut back to Hoyt, who drives Morgan to the Hewitt house and just beats the crap out of him when he gets there, just real bad. Says a homophobic slur. That was the moment when I realized he was Arlie Ermey because it rhymed with maggot, a very famous word he's said in other movies. So I was like,
this is what triggered your memory?
That was the moment where I went that's why I recognized him. Okay.
That's where he's from. That's the
Toy Story guy. It's a shame that the, homophobic slur was the thing that got me to go, that's Arlie Ermey. Not that he's known for, saying slurs. It's just that it literally rhymes with one of the words he's famous for saying.
He's not known for doling out compliments.
Yeah. So yeah, he beats the crap out of him. I don't remember if it's actually in the cut they have in the movie or if it was in the documentary as one of the takes they had where he almost looks like he's drowning him in some mud. He is torturing Morgan here. Back at the van, right as Erin is about to drive off, both front tires just fall off. I'm assuming Leatherface did it while they were hotwiring the car when they weren't looking or something.
With the very same lug wrench that was used in the fight earlier.
The tire iron, you mean?
Presumably. The tire iron lug wrench.
The lug wrench tire iron. Trademarked.
2 in 1.
Yep. I mean, or they're the same thing, or who knows. Apparently, I'm not a car guy. When I watched a YouTube video and someone said lug wrench, I went, oh, I guess it's a lug wrench. I swore it was a tire iron. But I don't know what I'm talking about. So yeah, then Leatherface, he's here, and he starts his chainsaw. He starts chainsawing the van, go through the back window, I think the front window as well, before he gets on top of the van and starts just chainsawing through the roof. Through this Mad TV poster, or Mad Magazine at the time, because I don't think Mad TV existed yet, but Mad Magazine poster that they got permission to put on the roof of the van. Yeah, so he starts chainsawing through that, but then they are able to get out of the car, though, and Pepper starts to run away from but she is caught by Leatherface, who carves her and her winter jacket up, kind of off screen.
Yeah, we see a lot of down fly into the air.
A bunch of feathers all throughout the air. And then there's a shot of Leather turning to reveal his Kemper mask to Aaron. That I understand is supposed to be dramatic, but ends up just looking kind of derpy because Kemper, the actor, Eric, has a very distinct face, which he pulls off fine. But this mask looks a lot like his face, and when you kind of stretch it just a little bit to put on Leatherface's head, it looks dork. It looks silly. I know it's supposed to be serious. You're supposed to be that moment where she realizes oh my gosh, he killed Kemper. But it just looks stupid. And I feel bad because and maybe it's just me because a couple of videos I saw, they actually praised this scene. So maybe it's just me. I thought
the scene was effective.
I thought it looked silly, but that's just me. I was like, he looks like a dork now. This is less creepy than the other masks. Not that I think any of the Leatherface masks are great in this movie, but yeah. So Erin then starts her running from Leatherface with a chainsaw in the woods chase scene. It's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You have to have that scene. Yeah, he's chasing her. She ends up at a trailer where we meet Henrietta and the Tea Lady. The bigger lady is named the Tea Lady. Doesn't have a name.
That's her name, huh?
She is just the tea lady at the trailer is her name. And the other girl's name is Henrietta. Ironically, Henrietta gives Aaron some tea. Not the tea lady.
The tea lady?
Yeah. Come on. Also, apparently the reason there's two of them was because they initially, when they were kind of trying to decide the casting on this scene, there was two different mindsets of should we get someone young? Should we get someone older? And they decided, I don't know, let's just do both. So the tea lady was literally written in just because they're let's get both. All so, yeah. And then Henrietta is telling her that, it's okay that, Leatherface isn't going to do anything. He knows not to come here. He's a sweet boy. And that, it's just a skin disease. And, Aaron is still, freaking out because, no, he's not a sweet boy. He killed multiple people that she cares about. And Pepper. I'm just saying, no one knew Pepper, to be fair. But
the bond was not that deep, yeah.
Yeah, but her freaking out, though, does wake up a baby. So Henrietta tells her to drink some more tea as she takes some baked beans to the crying baby. I just thought that was really... Is it important? No. But I just thought it was really funny that she went to the fridge and grabbed baked beans and took them to feed the baby that was crying.
I did think that is good atmosphere, actually.
Yeah,
I think that kind of sets the scene.
Because also she's not going to be able to you see where Henrietta's living. Well, she's not going to be able to afford good baby food, so she got some baked beans. That's what they had, and baby can probably chew that.
Yeah. It'd be a very different.
Doesn't love baked beans.
Yeah. The picture would be just not the same if she had heated up the bottle and shook it up the form and everything. I mean, this is good characterization, in my opinion.
As she's doing that, she kind of stands up a little bit, Erin does, and she finds this photo of the hitchhikers. I think, at first I thought it was the hitchhikers family that she sees the photo, but it might have just been a photo of a different family with the baby. I'm not sure which one it was supposed to be, but she finds a photo, and at the very least realizes that the baby is definitely in it, and Henrietta isn't. So she realizes that, hey, Henrietta's lying. Then she also adds the drug. She's starting to seem a little woozy, and she also then hears a phone ringing, even though she was told they did not have a phone. So she, accuses Henrietta of stealing that baby girl for stumbling and passing out. Bum bum bum. Yeah, that's it. That's it for that scene. Aaron wakes up.
Promptly woken up by beer being poured on her face by good old Hoyt.
Yeah.
Good old Hoyt.
Also, Luda May is here as well, and she mentions being Leatherface's mom. Hoyt also calls her mama, which could be a term of endearment maybe for lovers, but also could be implying that he's also her kid. Who knows? They're a weird family where you don't get to know everything. Also, Jedediah is called, I believe, her grandson. At this point, he's outside and she won't let him in. She tells him to stay out with the dogs. Also, Monty's here.
And Monty.
Yeah, who I believe, at least according to the wiki, which typically gets their information from somewhere. I honestly expect them to do more research than I did when it comes to things. I believe Monty is referred to as Ludamay's brother, at least on the wiki. So, like,
yeah, Hoyt in the next movie calls him Uncle Monty. So,
all right. Isaiah's ahead watching other movies. I see how it is.
I read ahead. Yeah.
Wow.
Also, at this point, Monty says that Aaron should stay for supper, which is the only reference we have to the dinner scene, which I was a very welcomed non-inclusion. Nothing has been as good as the first movie. Let's stop trying. I'm very happy they didn't do it.
Yes.
Fair.
You're right. That is a decision to applaud.
Yeah. Then Luda May calls Leatherface in by his new real name, which is Thomas Brown Hewitt.
Very boring, normal name.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, he is supposed to be a person. Even Leatherface is supposed to be a person at some point. He should have just a name.
It just doesn't have quite the charm that Bubba does, you know?
That's a good point.
But I would argue Bubba typically is a nickname, not a actual name.
They called each other Bubba.
You could just, you're Bubba. Oh, that's Bubba over there.
Yeah.
Bubba could have been a nickname for Brown.
Bubba Brown.
Yeah. It starts with a B. I've heard less connections for nicknames like Bubba.
What are you talking about? Dick is a perfectly normal nickname for Richard.
Sure.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just I don't know how, I have a nephew, whose name starts with a D, but went by the nickname Bubba for a little bit. So, but it literally could be anything, is my point.
Yeah.
But yeah. Then Leatherface, he throws Aaron down the stairs, which is now flooded. Which it had been dripping the whole time, and maybe presumably when Andy tried to pull himself down, maybe he made the pipe worse. I don't know. It's now very flooded.
They got some real plumbing issues in the basement.
I think it was the Dead Meat who said in their video, the Dead Meat. That's the channel Dead Meat, I believe, said that they think that this is probably just, an excuse to get, Jessica Biel wet. It is, a Michael Bay movie. There's that, famous scene of the car washing. That was very important in Transformers. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, she's now in a very flooded basement, and Aaron finds Andy, who is somehow still alive. And now I'm gonna kind of describe this next part of the scene. Normally I like to pause a lot, but I'm gonna read all of my notes here for this next scene. Then we'll discuss the scene as a whole, just because there's a lot of weird choices in imagery in this scene that I want to just go beat by beat what happens. So Aaron finds Andy, whose arms are out like he's been crucified. The imagery is then also kind of extra supported by his one leg, kind of looking like Jesus' feet nailed together. Aaron tries to free him, but can't, and ends up kneeling at his feet, and then finishes him off with a stab to the gut, and falls to her knees again and begs to be forgiven, as she is now washed over by his blood. I don't at all understand the choice for that very on-the-nose religious imagery. Nothing about Andy would be a character I would have described as a savior.
Messianic. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is no doubt in my mind we were supposed to get messianic imagery from this scene, because all of those details I just said that went together. She is kneeling at him, begging for forgiveness while he's being crucified. And she doesn't stab him in the side like the Bible says Jesus was stabbed, but she does stab him in the gut to finish him off. There is...
And it's the spray of...
Yeah, and she's then washed in his blood. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Oh, you see, Austin, his death allows her to escape.
Sure, he dies for the sins of Leatherface, so Leatherface can be happy. I don't know.
Yeah, it does not make any sense.
It's literally it's the thing is, like, it'd be one thing if it was like just a little bit, like maybe his arms were just out, like, oh, you're like, oh, maybe they didn't, okay, maybe it wasn't on purpose. But the amount of like doubling and tripling down they do on the metaphor, I go, there's a point here, but I don't know what it is because it's not actually
Michael Bay
there.
really wants to be forgiven of his sins.
I guess. I don't know. It just, yeah.
It did feel like just kind of just there.
Yeah.
Nothing, like you said, nothing about his character would fit within that kind of role.
Nope.
No.
It does not make any kind of major achievement.
But it is so on the nose that it had to be brought up because it is not there. The only part of that you could say maybe I'm taking an extra interpretation on is the one leg. Like, that's the only part that is maybe me adding. Everything else is blatant, and there's no way around that's what they were going for.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like, I'll bring up a completely different, genre movie, but, like, in Man of Steel, the Superman movie, there's a lot of messianic imagery with, like, Superman putting his arms out. But you know what he is? The savior of man. Like, That's the point.
It makes sense.
Andy is not.
Or like in Platoon, and Willem Dafoe gets shot, and he does that pose, and
Yeah.
and it's established he's this innocent. Yeah,
but
he's the opposite. Yeah.
We'll move on because there's nothing else we can say because there's no point. There's no other thing to add here because it's just there. But yeah, she then finds Morgan, who is still alive, in a tub, and Jedediah leads them to an escape route. While Leatherface starts to chase after them with his chainsaw. They both escape at the last second thanks to Aaron kicking at Leatherface as well as a little Jedediah bite on his wrist. Fun fact, the initial script had Leatherface then brutally killing Jedediah, but they decided that audiences might not be ready for that, so they cut it out.
Wait for the second movie for that one.
Well, the second one is the next movie. The only other movie that has these characters at all is a prequel, so I don't think so.
Oh.
I could be wrong, but that would be
of the movie.
A ballsy move to kill Jedediah before he's seen.
Before he's alive.
They both escape. I read that. Then they hide in this little old abandoned house that's near the property for some reason. But Leatherface breaks down the door. Look what your brother did to the door of our friend's house. Morgan and Aaron both hide. Morgan is put into a wardrobe by Aaron, and Aaron hides in like a rat-infested closet. Then Aaron, it's kind of like a tense scene where she's kind of looking around and like seeing Leatherface in the room, but Leatherface doesn't seem to do anything. He does hear one of the rats near her, and she gets really scared for a second, but then he leaves. So she stands up thinking she's safe. So, obviously she's not. And Leatherface punches his arms through the wall behind her. I think Friday the 13th 5 was one of the ones that did that through a wall specifically.
Yeah.
But also you could say 4 through the window is a very similar.
Through the window, through the wall.
To the windows, to the walls. Until
the blood drips down the walls.
Yeah. Then after that, he kind of throws Aaron down to the ground, and right before he's about to chainsaw her, Morgan runs over and stops him, and Leatherface then hangs Morgan by some handcuffs that are on him on a chandelier. At first, I thought he was going to use the chandelier like a meat hook, but he doesn't. Yeah. He hangs him by his wrists, through the handcuffs, and then he takes his chainsaw and cuts him in the crotch with it off screen, which
and he dies.
Medieval.
Yeah. Which, from my understanding, was the thing where they actually, I don't know if there was even ever an unrated version of this movie, but there actually is, at least in the documentary, I saw some footage of a better kill that they were basically you really just need to cut it. This especially at this point, this is one of the first movies that even got as violent as it did after a very not dark period. I guess probably actually a better period if you want to be like morally upright. But there was like starting in like the late 80s through all of the 90s, like graphic violence was not what horror movies were about anymore because the MPAA really had cut down, and then like the teen horror fad that started because of Scream really didn't care. And this is like before Hostel and Saw. Like this is kind of what ushered in both the remake boom as well as like the more violent movie boom as well. So there were still some limitations, so they did have to cut the cooler kill of like some guts falling out of him as he cut him down there.
We will see that in a different version. We will see that in a different version. Or something similar.
Gotcha.
Embellishment.
Aaron then runs away, being chased by Leatherface, obviously. And she goes through a barbed wire fence unscathed. Like she like gets through like the little pieces of the barbed wire. But Leatherface is not so lucky, and he trips on the barbed wire, and they recreate the chainsaw falling on his leg scene. But I'm actually really fine with that. I really actually am completely cool with them redoing this scene because they gave a very like specific reason for it to have happened. Like he tripped on the barbed wire. I feel like that's really justified. Like so, it was
just like
yeah. I'm not wrong. I love the first one too, even if it's campy and stupid. I loved that part of that, but I like that this time felt more justified than like some of the other times they redid things.
Than the banana peel of the first one?
Yeah. Not even that. No more just like specifically like other things they redid in this movie.
Oh,
Some of them felt like, okay, we gotta do the butt scene. Let's redo the butt scene because we gotta redo the butt scene. This was like, hey, let's redo the chainsaw scene, cutting his leg. Okay, cool, we have a reason to do it. Not, I don't know, let's see Jessica Biel's butt because it's Jessica Biel's butt.
Yeah.
So yeah. He cuts his leg. Erin then makes it out to a street, and she begs a car to stop and help her, but they drive off without helping her. Aw. Poor Erin. Guess she's gonna die. Nah, just kidding. She then runs and hides in a slaughterhouse, not the house from the last movie, an actual place where cows are slaughtered. Very confusing. And this franchise,
not for Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, no Matthew McConaughey. There was no Vilmer here. Very sad.
Illuminati.
No Illuminati.
Well, there might have been. We don't know.
And nipple rings.
We don't know. We don't know if the Illuminati was there. If at the very least in this movie they were being more in the behind the scenes.
Subtle.
Yeah, more subtle. There's nothing about this movie that says that this family isn't working for the Illuminati.
We've seen of like who gets into the Illuminati. It's possible that this family could
there's
be.
No saying that they're not.
Yeah.
Leatherface pretty much finds her immediately there though. So like it didn't really like she feel like she was trying to she's like closing all the gates behind her. Like there was a scene like a little scene right before this where like you're like, oh, okay, she's gonna like get away a little bit here. But then Leatherface is just there. Like he just happens to grab her foot right before she's like able to fully escape. But she is actually then almost immediately able to escape from him again, and she hides in a meat freezer. Where I got a couple fun facts about the meat freezer. All the meat was, as you might notice, a lot of it was bagged. Like you have like bags over it. That was because they didn't have a big budget and they rented all the meat. And it's like 3 or 4 slabs of meat that they keep rearranging because that's all the meat they had. Like pretty much all the meat you see is like some of the same meat, and it's also mostly meat that like then later was eaten by actual people because it's all bagged up, and that's why she's touching the bag, not the actual meat, so she's not doing any damage to it. Except for like there's the one time she's like in the one, which I think that one also might be fake, but because they also couldn't afford to like make a bunch of fake meat either, because that also cost a lot of money to make that much fake meat. And then we have an extra bonus fun fact about this meat scene is Jessica Biel hated this scene because she's a vegan. And she said that so like it was very hard for her. Like she was like a long-time vegan already at this point. Like it was very hard for her to be like have to be in the scene because she's surrounded by a bunch of like dead cows, which
Hold on. Well, you're implying like when you say long-time vegan, you imply like is this like an addiction type situation? She's like, oh no, I'm tempted with meat.
It wasn't like a recent thing. Like it's not like that's what I mean. Like I didn't take it. I was saying she's been a vegan for a long time. I had no ulterior motive when I said it like that.
No, I wasn't talking about you. Like, I'm just curious if she's like was trying to stave off like a hamburger addiction or something.
I don't think
Or
so.
like, I think the funnier alternative is like morally, I can be in a movie where people get like gored and disemboweled with a chainsaw, but if I have to hide near some actual meat, that's a little unethical.
I mean, I guess
That's
the argument. I mean, here's the thing. I'm not a vegan at all, but the argument would be made that this is a fake movie where no humans were killed. Those cows actually died. Like, there is the difference.
Good point.
Like, yes, it is.
Rent real meat.
Yeah, those were real cows, not real humans that died. So
That's fair. That is fair.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna still eat. It's turkey, so it's kind of one of the more acceptable animals to eat. But I am having turkey for dinner. But so like, I don't care. I am not a vegan at all. But I can see the difference.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
I'd be like saying like, I would never kill someone in real life, and you'd be like, you were in a movie with murder. It's like, they're different.
That is fair.
The Arlie Ermy was quoted as saying he's anti-murder. Can you believe the hypocrisy?
Wow.
Leatherface, which I believe is established in the next movie, so like it is kind of a hint maybe at his past. He knows how like everything works in this building. Ooh. And he actually like starts the, I don't even know what it is, but the meat moving process, like it's on like a mechanical system that moves it around, and he hits the button that makes it move. It kind of reminds me of kind of like at a dry cleaner, almost like that kind of a system.
Like conveyor belt.
Yeah. Something like that. And he uses that to like jostle the meat, which knocks her out of her hiding spot.
Jostle the meat. Just made me laugh.
And then he ends up. Then she kicks him in the nuts before he can, kill her with his saw. Then Leatherface turns on the sprinkler, which, as I've already established, just feels gratuitous. Jessica Biel has been wearing a white tank top this whole movie, and now there's water raining down on her for very important plot reasons that don't stop almost immediately and mean nothing. Like, it'd be one thing if, like, let's say, like, to play devil's advocate, you know what something you could have done? Had Leatherface use the sound of her moving in the water to be what helped him find where she was.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Nope. No reason. We just wanted that. We wanted to see Jessica Biel's bra under her shirt. That's it. That's the whole reason. And it's like, come on, guys. Really?
Why is this your Michael Bay impression?
I mean, once again, Michael Bay is only the producer, so I don't know how much say he actually had on this. It's easy to blame Michael Bay because, he did, direct, Megan Fox in Transformers, which also feels very gratuitous. So I wouldn't put it past him to being part of the, say on this. But it also very well could be, the director of this movie, not Michael Bay's fault. Playing devil's advocate for Michael Bay, who is the devil. He might have not been at fault for this one. But yeah, then the water kind of just stops. Well, not yet, because the water is still going as Erin arms herself with a cleaver. Then it stops and is never brought up again. And she hides in a locker. And she then gets his attention by banging on the locker to get him to kind of start coming towards her. And Leatherface starts checking lockers. He then hears one rattling and opens it, chainsaw revved, ready to kill her, but it's just a little pig. She then pops out from behind him and cleaves his arm off.
Yeah. An impressive feat.
Yeah, it was also really cool. A lot of blood. Like, there's a lot of blood on the ground afterwards. The chainsaw spins in it. It's a really cool scene. Especially after, the non-gore we've had to see in the last two movies, especially. Like, the first movie, famously has, no gore, but it's done in such a way that you don't realize it as much. Compared to the second movie, which was Tom Savini gore, so it was amazing. And then you had 3 and 4, which just kind of sucked when it came to gore. And 4 sucked in general. But, But this movie went, hey, we'll give you gore. Which, once again, I do think deserves a lot of credit for, because this was, like I said, pre-Saw and Hostel, post the like Scream era. Like, gore was not what horror was about anymore. Like,
Good point.
so like
Yeah.
a lot of credit for bringing that back. This movie walked so Hatchet could run, and I'm very happy for that. So yeah, then he can't pick up his chainsaw because that was his chainsaw arm was the other arm. It's actually still attached to the chainsaw, and he also only has one arm now. So he's trying to pick it up, and he like eventually like shakes off the thing, but then like still just doesn't have it in him right now. So he slips down and sits just armless with his chainsaw on the ground, as Erin escapes out into the rain, and she waves down a truck. That's another callback to the first movie, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, it's a truck. That
way. Yeah.
Wow, an 18-wheeler in 2 movies? That's revolutionary.
Look, connect the dots.
Yeah. Remember in the first movie where they, kill Franklin like Jesus? Oh, wait, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That wasn't a callback. That was just
a little bit subtle.
That was also that one was actually also a subtle callback to this book called the Bible.
To the Gospel of Mark.
Yeah. So yeah, she gets into the truck and she starts kind of saying like the same things as the hitchhiker, which once again I actually thought was really well done. Like, not foreshadow. I mean, I guess it could be foreshadowing depending on when they wrote the scenes, but like a callback of being like, hey, you're now seeing exactly why that girl was saying and talking the way she was, because she must have went through the same kind of thing that this girl went through, which I thought was cool.
Cyclical.
Yeah. And she starts just kind of, in very much the exact same fashion, starts freaking out as he heads towards the gas station. Like, she's like trying to pull it. She's in a not pickup truck, 18-wheeler. So she's in the cab here. So she's able to like immediately grab that steering wheel. She doesn't have to lunge really at all. She's just like wrenching at the steering wheel, trying to get him to stop. And he eventually comes to a stop, but at the gas station. And he's like, I have had enough of this. This is not what I signed up for when I tried to help you random girl on the street. So he leaves her in the truck and heads into the gas station to talk to the Hewitts. While he asks for help from them, Jessica Biel, Erin, she steals the baby, and as we're seeing her hot wiring a car as Sheriff Hoyt is walking around the pickup truck, gun out, about to open that door. He opens it, but she's not there because she was hot wiring his cop car the whole time, and she hits him. And then, to make sure he's dead, she reverses over him, and then drives back out over him again. So he is dead now.
She hits him with the old Vilmer special.
Yeah.
Yeah, for racing fans.
Puts in her metal tape.
Yeah. I'm really disappointed. This movie wants to recreate scenes, but doesn't recreate that one?
Yeah.
Before she gets to drive off with the baby, though, like completely, we get one final like little scare here as Leatherface pops out with the chainsaw and swipes at the cop car, but yeah, she keeps driving. It didn't stop her or anything.
Really doesn't make any sense because he's only got the one hand. Like, he wouldn't have been able to start the chainsaw back up.
He got help.
His teeth.
Yeah, he like
his foot in one arm.
Toes. Yeah.
He figured it out. Leatherface is a very ingenuitive man.
Yeah.
But really, the reason is so he could do a very poorly done, very quick, not that much there chainsaw dance real quick as he spins around after she walks away. That's why it's there. It's so he could do the spinning chainsaw. That's literally the only reason it's here. And then, speaking of things that are here for no reason, well, we cut back to the crime scene footage from the opening where Leatherface attacks the cop and the cameraman, and we end with some final narration saying that this case is still open. Also, and that was the only footage of John, what was his name? Tommy Hewitt. Thomas Brown Hewitt.
Thomas Brown.
Known more as Leatherface.
Thomas Brown, Bubba Hewitt.
Bubba Jr.
Yeah.
Somehow he
Leatherface.
didn't bleed out after having his arm cut off either.
Somehow he's alive, but also maybe he's about to die after he kills them. Who knows? I thought it was
The
better.
case is open, guys.
Yeah, the case is open.
know.
We don't know. He could be alive. How did they get the footage though? But that's not the point of today's video. My final thoughts are, as somewhat established, I think the movie is very pretty. I think Daniel Pearl deserves a lot of credit for what he did. Overall, I thought it was fine. It was a fun enough time at some parts. Kind of dragged a little bit here and there. But, it's definitely not... It didn't hurt me to watch it like some other movies have in this franchise. And definitely on Horror Boys. This is definitely on the scale of, Hereditary to Freddy's Dead. This is definitely closer to Hereditary, but still nowhere near either. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I've already kind of established it, but I think Jessica Biel did a really good job as a final girl. She's one of the more interesting final girls this franchise has had, and maybe just in general, she's a pretty good final girl. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I also appreciate the significance of it, like what it did for bringing gore back to horror, as well as starting the remake craze, which a lot of people don't like a lot of those remakes, but if this movie wasn't successful, the Fast and Furious, the Friday the 13th remake would have never happened, and that's one of my favorite Friday the 13th films. And it's made by the same studio, literally the same director and cinematographer. Like, if this movie failed, it never would have happened. So for that alone, I love this movie. But yeah, I do think it's a good movie. It's not a great movie at all, though.
Yeah. I think this movie is absolutely serviceable and even pretty solid in some regards. Like, all the acting in this movie is at the very least decent, if not good. Jessica Biel, Arnie Ermy, parts of
Bubba, do you thought you liked
No.
you liked Thomas Brown Hoot?
Leatherface was a Leatherface, but a really aggressive Leatherface.
He was born to be him, Chris.
It's very aggressive. Some of the choices in the movie were a little confusing, like the very obligatory religious
Christ imagery.
Yeah. Imagery. But none of it super took me out of the movie. For the most part, I think my main complaint with the movie is that most of it felt very kind of cookie cutter, predictable, and in that regard kind of boring, but not to an extent where I was falling asleep. But I didn't have a great time watching the movie, but the movie wasn't bad either. It was kind of just somewhere in between for me. Yeah.
I feel about the same way. I might be feeling generous after the movie we just finished reviewing. This was certainly much better, much tighter. It was an able remake. I never would have guessed that it was low budget. I learned that from you in this podcast.
Because lower budget. Like, it was $20 million instead of $40 or $50 million, which is what they would have wanted to have to do even digital effects and stuff. A lot of those.
It's not B movie, but
It's the whole background, I guess, that I didn't share was part of the reason they wanted to make the studio Platinum Dunes was to make more lower budget movies, giving relatively unknown directors chances. So $20 million budgets compared to the $100 million budgets Michael Bay was used to at the time already. It is still a high budget if you look at most things. But also not for Hollywood, because Hollywood budgets are insane when you actually know what the numbers are, especially these days.
I see. Well, yeah, I mean, there was a certain level, like a certain threshold of quality that when I saw the New Line logo, I came to expect. I thought, okay, this is like I know this is not going to be like the last one. The actors will act in a way that's convincing, and the story will like arc and fall, and that's pretty much what I got. You know, it did drag a little bit. I think. Um, and I think that a lot of the setting and bleeding into a lot of the kills themselves and just the scariness did feel a little bit thrown together. Why does Leatherface keep his victims in a bathtub of water? Why did he decide to
He's brining them.
brine for flavor?
Yeah.
He's marinating them. You know, he didn't seem to be restrained in the bathtub. Anyway, I won't dwell on the bathtub. It's just one example of like they just thought like we're just going to create a moist, fetid, gross atmosphere. Everybody's sweaty and flies are circling, and we'll have bundles of little bones and dolls, and that's it. You know, um, we didn't get anything like the skeletal couch from the first one. You know, it's like here's some bones. You know, so pretty different. That's about it. You know, serviceable, like Chris said, an able remake. Um, it is not a movie like worth ridicule, like some of the previous ones we've reviewed. You know, so
Fair. I do want to add real quick though that New Line Cinema did make the worst movie we've ever watched, Freddy's Dead, as well as was one of the studios behind the last movie. Like they were also behind for
I did not.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. So I also do like a lot of New Line movies we've watched, but they don't have the greatest track record.
That's a good point.
They have made two of the worst. Actually, three of the worst, because they also made Jason Goes to Hell, which we also all hated. So
I see.
I'm not like they also made Jason X, and we're
my
part
gosh.
of Friday the 13th,
What's
the
wrong with me?
remake. So like there are some movies we did enjoy that they made,
They've made a lot of bad movies.
but they've also made bad movies. So yeah,
There's that.
there is that. They also, I believe, were also in part of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I think they might pretty much release all of the movies that were part of Platinum Dunes. This like remake thing. I could be wrong. I haven't seen the Amityville Horror remake or the original. I don't care.
It gave us Creighton Duke.
I hated
that-
Creighton Duke.
That atones for a multitude of sins.
Yeah, I didn't like
Creighton
Creighton Duke, but fair, I guess. The general Friday the 13th fandom love him, so I guess they're thankful that for New Line Cinema. But yeah, that's been this movie. Next week we'll be back with the prequel to this movie.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
No, it's called Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning.
The Beginning.
Which is a prequel to this movie, because everything has to just be like, wait, what's this one connected to? Oh, it's connected to one other movie. Got it. Okay.
Well, we can't have Leatherface have one arm in a whole movie.
Yeah, but pretty much. Well, we could have done like a cool like Ash thing where like he puts the chainsaw there. I don't know. They could have done something. But we didn't get that. Instead, we are getting the prequel, which we will be watching next week. If you liked this podcast, please give it a 5-star review and like it, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you found it there. We're on all the podcast apps, that of the 3 main ones. But yeah, we're there all those places. If you want to support us directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/horrorboys. Yeah. I've been Austin, and I've been with, Chris and Isaiah, so goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.